Hope everyone is having a great week so far. And it's hard to believe that holiday is already right around the corner here. While we're waiting for everyone to trickle in, for those of you who haven't joined a Rockerbox webinar before, I will just give you a little bit of a rundown. We have a chat option in the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see, where you are able to post questions, comments as we go. We love audience participation if you haven't joined one of our webinars before. So please put any questions there. We will stop along the way. And then we also have dedicated time at the end for Q&A. So please don't be shy. The more questions, the better. And for everyone who just joined, we're giving everyone a few minutes to pop in the room before we get started. Will here, he lives in an area of the country that gets snow, so more likely to have, I'm already thinking about a white Christmas or the holidays. I live in LA, so I just have the same weather every day, which I absolutely will not complain about because I am not a cold weather girl.
You've never had to shovel snow off a stoop, Kelsey?
Oh, I have. I grew up in Ohio and then I lived in New York. So there's always the question of why I'm so weak against the elements, but I gave up my Ohio roots a long time ago. Yeah, I used to do the thing which apparently is very bad for your car, where you pour hot water on the windshield. Apparently that can crack it, but I found it's a much faster way to get rid of the ice than the scraper method. My dad is somewhere cringing. For everyone who just joined, we are going to get started in just a minute here. Just for a little bit of admin, if you haven't already heard me give the spiel, use the right-hand side of the screen for chat to post any questions, which we'll be answering as we go. So we love audience participation for anything that comes up as we get started. We'll go ahead and kick off kind of high level with some intros while people trickle in. So today we are talking all things testing and also unified measurement with Rockerbox as relates to preparation for the holiday season. We know, many of the brands that we work with have a pretty significant heavy up and sales period around the holidays that you are probably heads down prepping for. So hopefully this is very timely as you start to think about how you can incorporate testing and other forms of measurement as you prep for that holiday time period. With me today, I have Will, who is our head of professional services, and I'll let him give a little bit of an intro.
Sure. Thanks, Kelsey. Hi, my name is Will, head of professional services here at Rockerbox, and I support all of our customers across all of our product lines. So that's everything from attribution to MMM to testing as well.
And then for those of you here that I haven't met, I've met many of you. I am our head of customer success. I've been at Rockerbox for a minute now and have worked across many of our brands. So really excited to have this conversation today. Let's go ahead and kick ourselves off with kind of a high level question to start and thinking about, and many brands might already be in the midst of some testing, but thinking about why is testing so crucial in our lead up to holiday season. And many of the questions that we get from brands that we work with is one around maximizing their budget, right? So it's not uncommon to have incremental budget that you can leverage over Black Friday, Cyber Monday, if that's when you have your sale, or some brands we work with actually heavy up in January, so more of that New Year's push. But thinking about for the budget that we've been allocated, how do we maximize that budget? And then also, if there's an opportunity for incremental budget after the sale starts, how do you go about really proving out return on your investment so you can make that justification for increased budget internally? And I know Will has quite a few thoughts here, so I'm going to let you come in.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. I mean, for me, there's really two main reasons why I think of testing as being so crucial in this time of year. And one of them is that this is really the last chance to start testing the effectiveness of your media before consumers start to change their behavior. So when we look at the patterns of behavior that we see for a lot of our customers, we see that demand starts to change as early as the start of November or end of October, when customers start to delay those purchases. They know that the holiday season is coming. They know that there are likely to be discounts. And so they start to wait and they'll put off those big purchases. So it's really the last chance to test in a quote unquote normal time of year before probably realistically Q1, because we might have to wait until something like January before that customer activity has gone back to normal and we can start testing again. So if you want to test in a normal time period, now is the last chance to get that live in market. And the second reason why I think of this as so important is that you really only get one chance per year to test in the holiday period, obviously. And those tests are a pretty high risk, right? Like there won't be another chance for 12 months, but also it's a very, very important time of year for revenue. And so if you're going to put even a little bit of your media budget or your sales at risk for the benefit of getting some learnings, that needs to be very, very well planned out, very well thought through, and extremely carefully executed. So now is the time to start planning that if you haven't already. Figure out what you want to learn and have a really robust plan for doing that measurement and that testing.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We're going to get into more details around specific examples of one, where we've seen successful tests, two, just examples of when you might want to conduct a test and some of the future questions. One of the things that we've also seen with customers is not just testing from, say, a channel perspective, but also using holiday as a time to test out things like product bundles or kits. And this is a good opportunity to see what really hits with your audience. And you can do that quite early in the season and then iterate on those learnings to say, okay, actually, when customers are looking for those additional savings, these products are working really well together in a bundle, or maybe they're not, and you want to switch it up before you do that stronger heavy up and spend. We're going to focus a lot of our conversation today on testing, as I mentioned, but we also want to talk about unified measurement. As at Rockerbox, we believe, there's really no perfect solution to measurement, and it's actually about using a triangulation of different measurement methodologies to inform the smartest marketing decisions. And one of those measurement methodologies that our customers leverage and we have at Rockerbox is marketing mix modeling, or MMM. And we thought it'd be relevant to weave in how brands, in addition to testing, can also leverage insights from MMM when planning out their holiday campaigns. And, I think just taking a step back, historically, one of the biggest questions we've gotten from customers leading up into holiday is, how do we identify diminishing returns as quickly as possible to make sure that we're not losing money? And not only just looking at that at the channel level, but also thinking about difference in diminishing returns across tactics and how, for example, that might look different for your Facebook prospecting versus retargeting campaigns. And Will, I don't know if you want to dive in a little bit on how we see MMM and the lead up into holiday as playing a role here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, this really gets to the heart of the question of, if I have another dollar to spend, where should I spend it? Which I've heard from a lot of customers over the years. If you're thinking that to yourselves, or you've ever thought that, don't worry, you're an extremely good company. It's one of the most common things that we have to help answer. And there's two ways I think that the MMM will help with this. I mean, the first way is that it should be a core part of your measurement strategy when it comes to planning out your entire Q4 budget. So as you're going through your budgeting cycle, just figuring out where you're going to put your dollars at the very highest level. MMM is a great tool for that. It should absolutely be core to that process if you have access to a model. But the second place that this becomes really critical is thinking about the response curves, the pattern of diminishing returns on spend that every brand has seen as they start to heavy up in different channels. You just see less and less response over time. And MMM is great for this problem set because what it allows you to see is, where is my inflection point? At what point do I start to just get so much less from every incremental dollar that I spend that it's actually not worth even deploying that money in that channel, and I should look somewhere else. So MMM, great tool for figuring out where are my extra holiday dollars going to be the most effective in market.
And I think this leads us really nicely into our next topic around, we're going to be talking about MTA, but really thinking about, okay, you've identified that point of diminishing returns. How do you make optimizations within the channel to drive maximum efficiency? Once you understand what that optimal spend level should be, obviously you want to spend that in the most effective way possible. And I'll kind of kick us off here with thinking about, outside of just multi-touch attribution from the lens of credit redistribution, I think it's really important to think about user paths to conversion and thinking about time to convert. So we know that time to convert changes around the holidays. People enter the funnel earlier as they're starting to do discovery, and this can impact your time to convert by channel. Your time to convert might also be impacted based on when you start that spend heavy up in comparison to when your promo actually drops. The reason I'm outlining this is hugely important for you to understand your cash flow and your payback period. So having a really close eye on what is your time to convert and how is this changing in holiday as you launch your sale is going to be really important as you start to think about shifting budget and where you might want to put incremental spend. So, just to outline a specific example, if you have two top of funnel channels, like if we pick on maybe CTV and Facebook, and you understand that time to convert for new customers that have those channels as a first touch point, if you have X amount of budget, at some point during the sale that you want to spend and you have a certain revenue target to hit, this can help direct you where that money should go. Of saying, okay, actually, if we're looking to hit X goal by the end of this month, we actually need to shift that towards Facebook versus CTV because we know we're going to see a quicker return, and you're able to manage your cash flow and also manage internal expectations this way. It's really helpful to, as you work with your stakeholders internally, for them to have a strong understanding of, just because we start spending more on this channel, especially if it's top of funnel, you're not going to see an immediate return, and you'll need to be a bit patient there. Well, I'm not sure if you want to add to this from a slightly different lens as well.
Yeah, of course. I'm really glad that you brought up that sort of time to convert component of MTA, because it's really important component of any test is understanding how long we need this test to run for. And that's a great use case for using your multi-touch attribution to inform your testing. If let's say that I want to test a prospecting channel, and I know that the average time to convert on the prospecting channel is 4 weeks, well, there's not much point in me running a 2-week test. And especially now in this time of year when time is ticking and we want to test quickly so that we can get in there before the holidays, understanding which channels you even have time to test is really, really critical. Also, you mentioned this, I think, a little bit as well, is that the consumer behavior changes so much in the holiday period, and we can use MTA to really dig into that. So we understand how does the timeline to conversion change during the holiday period, and if I want to design a test specifically during the holidays, then I will understand the length of the test and what that should look like based specifically on holiday consumer behavior. So that's one direction. The other direction that you can integrate your attribution with testing is just thinking about using testing results to augment your attribution model. You can understand what the results of each channel, the effectiveness of each channel looks like with the different methodologies, and you can triangulate or start to triangulate into a unified view of what performance looks like. That's not necessarily unique to the holiday period. That's true all times of year, but certainly important to do in the holidays as well as any other time.
Yeah, I'll also make a plug here that in addition to incorporating those test results from an MTA lens, we're also able to include that in MMM and help build out priors for specific channel performance, which can be extremely helpful. So we very much see these different forms of measurement as feeding into each other to inform results and output. I will just pause here if there's any questions. We've shockingly had a very quiet chat today, so I will just plug if there's any questions, even if it's unrelated to the current question we're talking about, please put it in the chat. We love to stop along the way and have some audience engagement. So as many questions as possible. We've talked a lot around strategy and how brands should think about leveraging different measurement methodologies in holiday prep. But I think it's important to also focus for a minute on what are some common pitfalls we see. And this is specific to testing and what you should be thinking about if you are planning to run tests now in preparation for holiday, or even if you're looking to understand previous test results and you're having some questions or troubles. And kind of starting here, I think one of the things that we see brands commonly struggle with is executing a test in a clean fashion. So when I say that, talking about, you often have pressure from internal stakeholders potentially of, we have X amount of brand spend, go spend it now. We don't have time to do this in a way to cleanly test. Maybe you're running across 5 different channels. And at the end, you just have really muddy results where you're not able to cleanly articulate what is the impact of the spend in each of those channels, and in the future where you might want to spend more or cut back. So one of the things that we would recommend is, if at all possible, have a really deliberate planning conversation internally with your team. And you can also work with Rockerbox on this around test design, and wanting to make sure that you don't have too many things going on at once, and you have that clear control versus test period to have results and learnings from. Will, I don't know, your thoughts here.
Yeah, it really comes back to exactly what you just said about the importance of planning and having that thoughtful planning conversation and process. I think that the most common pitfall that I see is people rushing tests into market, either rushing tests into market to get them executed and finished before the holiday season begins, or deciding too late that there's something that you want to learn during the holiday season and putting the test into market without really giving it the proper thinking that it deserves. And of course, inevitably what happens is that you get a test that doesn't really work that well, or it doesn't tell you what you were hoping it would tell you, or even worse, that you just don't learn what you really expected to because you failed to set yourself up for success. And you end up with what I would say is a little bit of buyer's remorse on the end of your test, where you put a lot of media at risk to try and learn something, and then you forgot that actually you don't have the data infrastructure ready to measure a certain KPI, let's say. And so you might have learned something, but you didn't learn all of the things that you wish you had learned. So really making sure that you take the time to be thoughtful, think well in advance. Don't assume that you can just plan a test and get it live in market within a matter of days. That's very, very difficult to do and do properly without a lot of time investment.
And something we've seen to be really helpful here with brands we work with is putting together a testing roadmap and just overall measurement strategy that's shared internally and getting stakeholder buy-in. So if there's, say, pressure to move forward quickly with a test, when it's outlined in that plan, it's very clear, here is the benefit of us being slow and deliberate as needed to get those clear results and make smarter decisions moving forward. So that's something we would definitely recommend there. And I think this actually segues really well into, we've talked about some pitfalls, we talked about overall strategy, but we also want to spend a minute talking about some real world examples of successful testing strategies and how these are used in lead up to holiday and what the impact has been. And Will, do you want to take us away here?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best things to test really in any time of year, but especially in the run up to the holidays, are those channels that either you cannot measure well elsewhere, or where you have an indication or a hunch that the incrementality might be poor. So those are typically the kinds of channels that you'll see at the very, very bottom of the funnel. So a few examples could be some versions of affiliate, especially the more sort of coupon type lower funnel affiliate channels. It could be retargeting, remarketing, and it could be things like brand search. So channels that tend to already come with some indication that there is organic customer interest at play. It is not going to be a purely media-driven situation. So why are those important to test? Well, they're important to test likely because they are always tempting to heavy up. We know if we spend this much in affiliate, we get this much back. Or we know if we spend this much in brand search, we get this much back. And so going into the holiday season where you have that extra money to spend, making sure that you're spending it not in a channel that is down there in the lower funnel and is not going to get you that incremental result, that's really important. So an example that I like to talk about is measuring brand search. So brand search, if someone is searching for your brand, they know who you are. That's by definition, they know who you are. And so while they may not have made the decision to convert, they may have you already in the consideration set. I think that's a fair assumption for most brands. So one test that we executed for brand search was to actually just shut off brand search completely for 4 weeks. And we only concentrated on brand search. We left non-brand running. And then we were able to use Rockerbox MTA data to observe the results of what was happening in market. So of course, what happened? Well, brand search attributed conversions went to 0. That's what you would expect. We have no more conversions coming in from that channel because we have no more spend. Non-brand conversions continued. We had that campaign running. We saw those conversions coming in and recording data through the attribution platform. And we also saw that organic conversions jumped up massively. And that should tell us something very important. But it's not necessarily accurate, right? Just seeing that increase, that doesn't tell us the effectiveness of brand search. So what we did was we built a model which predicted an expected level of attributed conversions for brand search based on the time series of non-brand search attributed conversions. So we looked at the historical correlations. We built the model so that we knew for the 4 weeks when brand search was off, how many conversions we would have expected to get from brand search. And then we could do the same thing for organic. How many did we expect to get? And we could see how many we actually got. And the difference in lift for those organic attributed conversions versus the loss of what we did not get for brand search, the comparison of those two numbers can tell us something about the incrementality of brand search. And so that's a very powerful insight to be able to enter the holiday period with and be able to say, okay, you know, brand search or remarketing or whatever it might be, we know it's a very tempting place to increase budget, but we mustn't do it. There are other channels that are providing us higher incrementality out there, and those are the ones that we should heavy up spend when we have that extra money to spend.
Will, what would you say, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but question that we've gotten from customers is, your customer says, well, maybe the way that brand search performs during steady state non-holiday isn't the same as our need for brand search during holiday, especially as we know other brands might be more likely to increase their conquesting spend, and we're going to be outbid in this sense, or potentially lose share of revenue. How would you think about brands approaching a situation or question like that?
Great, yeah, great question. I mean, obviously, it takes a lot of confidence to go into the holidays and say we're going to shut off what we think are the most important media channels and just not spend anything. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But you could certainly think about this for a geo-test. If you're able to construct a geo-test that just geographically boxes the risk that you're taking, so you're really only shutting off spend in a handful of geographies or DMAs, you conceivably could make a case for that, for doing that over the holiday season and then getting a example result that is relevant to the holiday period as opposed to a sort of business as usual time of year. So that's definitely a good option if you want to still get that learning for the holiday season, but you don't want to put too much of your revenue or media budget at risk.
Yeah, that's I really like that point. I'm sure there's some people in the audience, there's no questions, but I'll ask the question I think people might have is, how do we go about constructing geotests at Rockerbox, and how do we think about those market pairings, and what level of assistance do we offer there?
Yeah, we offer a very hands-on level of assistance. The way that we think about those market pairings starts with a conversation with the customer. So what kind of channel are they looking to test? How granular is their data in terms of the geographic identifiers attached specifically to revenue and conversions? Those are the most important ones. And then we talk about what other types of work they have coming in market. And so we're trying to find that time of year when maybe they don't have a long series of store launches or a long series of product launches or a big holiday or something like that. So we're looking for a nice block of time where we can test and we don't have to worry too much about the test getting polluted. We also talk about what's their appetite for risk and trading on the risk of revenue or the risk of that media spend against the value of the learning that you're getting. So some customers might come to us and say, look, we just can't afford a very big test. We can only afford to test in 2 DMAs. That's fine. Then we will conduct a test against those DMAs. And what we're using is a machine learning algorithm that will take the data set of historical revenue and conversions with a geographic identifier, and it will look for groups of geos that it thinks are good to test in because they have a very, very high correlation of historical revenue and sales with a weighted basket of other geographies in the US. So that will allow us to then have 2 things. We have a group of test states or DMAs, which we can either start spending in or shut off spend in. And we also have a set of weights, which we can then apply to all the other DMAs or all the other states in America. And we can compare the results to those 2 sets of places while we're running the test. And obviously, if we increase spend or start spending in a channel in a particular place, we're looking for an increase in spend in those geographies versus the geographies that we're not spending extra in. But you can also do it the other way around, where we would cut off spend and then we would look for a drop in sales in those test geographies versus the control.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate you letting me put you on the spot. And we finally have an audience question. Thank you, John. So John's asking, are there other ways to test incrementality and isolation beyond geographic testing? Conscious affiliate incrementality testing may not be able to limit geographic regions. This is a really good one.
Yeah, great question. Affiliate is not the only example here. Obviously, there are other channels where you cannot have any geographic control. So it could be a host read in a podcast. It could be some influencer type of work. These things are much harder to test. So for affiliate specifically, it is not possible to ring fence those geographically within the US. If you have an international business, you may be able to ring fence some of your coupons and promos and affiliate activity in other countries. So you can still do a geo-test for affiliate. It would just likely have to be international as opposed to domestic in scale and scope. But not every customer wants to do that because either they maybe don't have a sizable international business, or maybe they don't believe that their customer profiles and the way that customers respond to affiliate are necessarily similar enough in foreign countries as they would in the US. However, that is still an option. The other option would be the slightly more, what's the right word? This again requires a bit more confidence to do, but you can just shut off your affiliate spend. As terrifying as that sounds, that is an option for any brand. And if you can find a low risk time of year to do that, then you can do maybe some causal impact testing or a sort of regression discontinuity type of analysis, where you're just creating an expected level of sales based on the historical level of sales, especially if you have a few years of sales and you can understand the trend and seasonality. That's absolutely a possibility, just to create that projection of sales and revenue. And then you can compare that expectation to what actually happened. A lot of brands do this and they learn something, and they learn something sometimes quite surprising. But yeah, John, it's a great question. It's not a super easy channel to test in.
So thank you, Will, and thank you, John. Hopefully that answered your question. If you have follow-ups, feel free to post in the chat. We're going to, in the interest of time, keep moving to talk about kind of the idea of quick wins versus long-term insights. As we know firsthand, right, there can oftentimes be pressure to have really quick learnings and be able to iterate fast, make decisions, versus maybe what is more long-term game of understanding like either what insights you'll apply to future sale periods, or in the case of holiday, we very well know that depending on when you heavy up spend, right, those quick wins could actually be in the beginning of your heavy up, and then you're able to apply those when your promo actually drops. So one of the things that I'll just call out here first is around optimization cadence and how that relates to spend pacing when you think about what you can do quickly versus what you need to give a little bit of time to. And this is also related to setting expectations internally. So if you're a brand that doesn't do kind of that gradual heavy up, but say the Sunday before Black Friday, you're hiking up spend and you're going to increase spend really quickly, over a short period. You need to give it a little bit of time to bake out before you start to make optimizations and before you make any quick decisions. So you should expect to see a hike in CPA, a dip in ROAS, and if you decide to make optimizations quickly during that time period, you might be shifting spend without seeing the full picture. So we very much recommend, if that is your spend pacing strategy, to give it a little bit of time. Now, in kind of contrast to that, if you start your heavy up at the beginning of the month, maybe it's over a 3-week period or even longer in some cases, as you work to slowly build your top of funnel and kind of collect that audience to then convert when your promo drops, you mostly can continue with your current optimization cadence, right? You might see small hikes in CPA as you gradually increase spend over time, but you can continue to make shifts within channels as you see performance across campaigns or even audience groups, and just make sure that you're spending, as efficiently as possible. And I know, Will, you had kind of like a slightly different take to this on how brands should be thinking about this.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the quick wins versus long-term insights during the holiday season really comes down to careful KPI selection. Mm-hmm. So obviously, revenue is the most important KPI for pretty much every business that you can think of, and especially during the holiday season. I mean, that really is where you want to be making as much money as you possibly can. But longer term, there may be other KPIs that are also incredibly important, and making sure that if you are testing in the holiday season, you're also taking those into account is critical. So it could be things like, what is the proportion of new customers that are becoming converters during that time period, as opposed to existing customers? If I'm getting more new customers, that's an investment in the long term, versus that quick revenue from existing customers who are just looking for a discount. So that's one. Another could be the number of people who sign up to a newsletter or sign up to receive some discount code. Those are investments in your first party data, if you like, and that has longer term repercussions than just managing to get one sale on Black Friday from an existing customer. So it's very business specific. I think every brand has a different set of KPIs that they might care about long term versus short term, but making sure that if you're testing, that you're testing a good balance. You're not just testing the very, very lower funnel. You're also understanding, how does this impact my upper funnel? How does it affect me long term?
Yeah, I actually think that segues really nicely into a question we have in a couple slides. So I actually might skip ahead and then come back around metrics. And most brands kind of have that main KPI that they're optimizing against, in steady state or more of that non-promo period. But really thinking about what are the key metrics that brands should be focusing on when testing their holiday campaigns and during this, sales period. And one of the things I'll first highlight, and Will already touched on this, is just the importance of having a strong baseline performance against your channels with that chosen KPI. So for most of the brands we work with, they're looking at either a CPA or ROAS, and you're really wanting to understand what's our baseline performance at the channel, at the tactic level, steady state. So then, in addition to measurement methodologies we've talked about like MMM, with that baseline performance, you can more quickly identify potential diminishing returns or understand, okay, baseline CPA for Facebook prospecting is typically at X. We're seeing it at Y. How long do we want to give it to even out how much higher we're willing to go during this time period? The other thing that I'll call out is metrics might shift slightly during this time period based on your goals. So maybe you're typically reporting out on ROAS or ROI, but during this holiday time period, you really care about new customer acquisition. And because maybe it's a heavy promo period for you, you're less concerned about ROI because you have that discount. So wanting to think about, there might be an additional metric that you want to layer in around new customer acquisition, or just thinking about what are the metrics that most accurately represent performance during this time period and will allow you to have comparables going into next year as we talk about, learning from past performance. Well, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that.
I don't know that I have a huge amount to add to what you've just said, but I will kind of double down on the importance of setting those benchmarks, like you pointed out. So making sure that you are learning what performance should look like, carrying that over to next year, but also as you're planning for the holiday season, going back into your attribution data, looking at what happened last year, trying to remember, well, where did we trip up? Where did we do well? Where did we do badly? What should we expect to get based on the performance that we saw in 2023? And therefore, we'll be able to actually assess performance and test results better once we have that kind of baseline understanding. And then, I think just again on the key metrics, I outlined a few in the previous question, but I think it's so brand specific. And really understanding what do you think of as success and what's important to you in a very, very broad sense. That's the most important conversation that you can have. It shouldn't be necessarily about understanding what other brands do, because every brand is different and every brand will have different goals and be at different stages of their growth cycle.
Yeah, I actually think you touched on a point that kind of brings us back to this question I quickly skipped over. But how you're using learnings from, so this is kind of skipping past this holiday period, right? And thinking about, okay, what is our recap process like? How should we be debriefing and reporting out on performance in a way that best equips us to make smarter decisions next holiday period or even during the rest of this year? Will, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, this is this for me is so important. I think, I would actually be really interested in, and if anyone wants to admit in the chat that they have been the person who was curious about the test that you did in April and what the results were from whichever publisher it was, but you couldn't find it. And so you have to go to your inbox and search and find the PDF. And that's how you kind of retain that knowledge base. I have 100% been that person. I'm completely guilty of it. So you're in good company, I think, if that's been you. But there is a better way. I mean, there are definitely better ways to store all of those insights and to make sure that you're keeping track of them and that you can pass that knowledge on, especially as people join and leave an organization or times change. So I think the most sophisticated brands don't necessarily do anything very, very technical with this. I think it's simply about keeping that core of knowledge that you've accumulated over the years and making sure that it all lives in one place. It could be as simple as a shared drive where all of the gold standard reports that you already have. They all sit in one place, you know where they are. And anytime anyone joins the team, that's just the first thing that you point them to. Okay, here's all the gold standard knowledge that we have. If you want to go and review all of that and understand how we run this operation based on all of that learning, this is where you need to start. And that just helps you keep all of that knowledge in one place and up to date and consistent, and make sure that nothing gets lost and just sits in an inbox languishing for a long time. So it doesn't need to be very sophisticated or technical. Just make sure that you have a process for passing that knowledge on.
I think that's great advice. It's not always about what's most complicated, but just getting a process in place. Well, I know we've covered a lot. We wanted to save plenty of time at the end for Q&A and wanting to answer any questions from the audience. Anything that we didn't cover yet today that would be really helpful, or any specific questions around Rockerbox's approach to testing, or even advice on any tests that you're currently conducting, we'd be happy to weigh in.
Just while we're waiting, Kelsey, I actually have one more thing to say about John, in answer to John's question.
Yes.
Is that really, so at the highest level, what you're looking for when you're testing something like affiliate is you're looking for any way to separate things that are driven by affiliate from things that aren't, or things that are touched by affiliate and things that aren't. So it could be as simple as saying, this coupon is only valid online, or this coupon is only valid in store, because suddenly we now have two different streams of revenue that we can compare to one another, one of which is impacted by affiliate and one is not. In the same way that you would have in a geo test, one area of geos that is affected by that channel and one that is not. So it could be anything, and thinking about things like online and offline sales as that dividing line where we're separating the two effects, that could be good enough. And it could be done by product as well. So there are definitely a lot of options there.
I appreciate that follow-up. We have a couple questions. Thank you to the audience. We have a question from Shay, and this is a great question. So, newish to Rockerbox, is there a report in platform that actually shows time to convert per channel and tactic? And the answer is yes. So if you have access to your Rockerbox account, you can also ask your CSM for help here. If you go to the marketing paths view, this will allow you to filter both at the channel and tactic level, if that's how you have your marketing activity structured in Rockerbox. You can also even look more granularly. So if you want to look at a specific campaign or even a specific creative, you're able to see, you can also filter for new versus repeat customers, which we find to be really important in looking at that time to convert. So for new customers that have a touch point with a specific channel, tactic, etc., what is the average time to convert? And then you're able to leverage that in reporting and decision making. And then we have a question from Cassie, which is also a great one. Is it possible to see a quick demo of how Rockerbox can be leveraged for these purposes? So you actually beat us to the punch here. And that, yes, absolutely. You're able to go to rockerbox.com/demo, set up time with a team member, and go through this so we can speak to your specific use cases and show you what's most relevant based on your channel mix and what you care about. Other questions? I'm going to take that as a sign that Will gave a very comprehensive overview of testing, and everyone is ready to go start conducting their pre-holiday tests. So we're excited to hear about your results. And please, if you do have questions or you're interested in finding out how Rockerbox can help, if you already work with us, please speak to your CSM. If you don't yet work with us, you can go to rockerbox.com/demo. We'd love to have a conversation. And with that, we can give everyone back a few minutes in your day. We really appreciate you joining, and I loved having this conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.